Greetings to you in the name of our risen and ascended Lord Jesus. Jim Lamb here, Executive Director of Lutherans for Life, coming to you from my little office closet here in our home. Perhaps you've heard that an international team of scientists have cloned human embryos for the purpose of embryonic stem cell research. And unlike the research in South Korea several years ago, which proved to be fraud, this appears to be the real deal. So I thought it would be important for me, first of all, to reiterate that Lutherans for Life is opposed to human cloning. Human cloning is not the creation of life by the hands of God. It is the production of life by the hands of man. God creates life so that we might serve him. Human cloning produces life and then destroys that life in order to serve man. And since this is in the news and will undoubtedly be discussed around water coolers at work and in our schools and hopefully in our churches, I thought it would be a good idea to review some of the aspects of human cloning, especially the language that is used in these discussions. So I put together a few notes here. In the May 16th edition of the Des Moines Register, and other news outlets had similar headlines, we read this: "Researchers clone human embryonic stem cells." But others, like Popular Science on their website, were a bit more precise. "Scientists create first cloned human embryo." You see, before you can have human embryonic stem cells, you must have a human being. The point is, researchers did not create a bunch of stem cells. They cloned a human being and then destroyed him or her for their stem cells. Now, the Popular Science article began pretty well with this statement: "Scientists have made an embryonic clone of a person." And then in this very unsophisticated scientific flip-flop, 2 sentences later, they make this statement: "It's unlikely that this clone could develop into a human." Now that's bad science. You see, the clone is not developing into a human being. The clone is a developing human being. And although we oppose the source of life from cloning, once that life is there, then we must treat that life as our neighbor. We must treat that life as someone for whom Jesus Christ shed his blood. So let me review again with the idea of that our language will be precise. Let me review the cloning process. In cloning, you need a human egg cell. Human egg cell has 23 chromosomes in its nucleus. So you remove that nucleus from the egg cell. Now you have an egg cell virtually devoid of any genetic material. Then you take a body cell or a soma cell. It could be any cell in the body, let's just say a skin cell. And you take that nucleus, which contains 46 chromosomes, the complete genetic makeup of whoever is donating that cell. You take that nucleus and transfer it into this now vacated egg cell. And that's why the cloning process is referred to as somatic cell nuclear transfer, the transfer of a nucleus from a somatic or a body cell. So now you have an egg cell. It has a nucleus with 46 chromosomes. And if you stimulate this egg cell, it may begin to develop. And now you have a cloned human being, someone who is the genetic twin of whoever donated that skin cell. Now, the intent of the use of these human embryos by the research that's making the news is not to implant these embryos into a uterus, but rather to destroy them for their stem cells. They allow them to grow to the blastocyst stage, about 5 days, and then remove their stem cells, which results in the death of that little boy or that little girl. Now, this is referred to as therapeutic cloning, cloning that has its intent to be used for therapy, the treatment or hopefully cure of disease. Now, reproductive cloning is a term used when the end result is actually a born baby. In other words, the cloned embryo is implanted in a surrogate womb with the hope that it will continue to develop there and then be born. Now, the researchers that are making the news claim that this is not their intent at all. In fact, they say for various reasons that it's probably impossible. But this, of course, doesn't preclude other researchers from pursuing this reproductive cloning. So let me just share a few points that we need to keep in mind as we have these discussions. First of all, the creation of life, that belongs to God, not man. Secondly, cloning does not produce a bunch of embryonic stem cells. It produces a human being that contains embryonic stem cells. Third, removing those stem cells murders that little boy or that little girl. Fourth, a clone does not develop into a human being. It is a developing human being. Fifth, a human being, regardless of its means of beginning, is our neighbor for whom Jesus Christ died. Somatic cell nuclear transfer is the same thing as cloning. Sometimes people will say they're opposed to cloning, but they're in favor of somatic cell nuclear transfer. We need to understand that those are the same thing. Seventh, the end, seeking the cure of human disease, does not justify the means, intentionally killing human beings. And finally, we do thank God for stem cell research that uses adult stem cells or reprogrammed stem cells. Research that reprograms body cells like a skin cell to become just like embryonic stem cells. We thank God that there is research that can be used ethically, that can be God-pleasing. Well, these are just some points that you may want to consider and keep in mind. And if you'd like more resources, we have produced several at Lutherans for Life that deal with these issues, brochures on stem cells, brochures on cloning, DVD on stem cell research and cloning. You can find these and other resources. Just go to cph.org and just type in cloning or stem cells, and that will take you to the materials that we and others have produced to help keep us informed on these issues. I pray God will be with you and that He will guide your discussions on this. I'm Jim Lamb, and this has been a comment from the closet.